Hello everybody and welcome. I'm Matt, Senior Client Success Manager here at White House Custom Color. And before we start chatting it up with Sarah today, just want to remind you to make sure and subscribe to our WHCC YouTube so you get notified of cool events like we're going to do today. You know in advance, so you mark it on your calendar. Follow along on Instagram at WHCC Pro, and for all of your product details, options, all that stuff, go to WHCC.com. And a reminder too, if you do have questions for Sarah while we're live today, put them in the chat and we'll get her to answer them while we're on the broadcast. If you're watching the recording of this, put it in the comments and we know how to track her down. So, anywho, thank you for being here with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. This is fantastic. So, for everybody that's watching along that doesn't know who Sarah Lindsay is, tell them who you are, what you do, where you're from.
Yeah, well, I'm Sarah Lindsay.
You are?
Yes, that's
all the
me.
time.
All the time. I would hope so. I've been a professional photographer for almost a decade now. I specialize in high school seniors, especially like the luxury experience when it comes to that.
Yep.
I live in Parker, Colorado, and we are currently working on building a studio on our property.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. And you can't beat the commute when you have a studio right on your property.
Yep, just grab this cup of coffee and just walk on over.
So when we were talking about the content for today's live, you said a lot of things that we recorded and I wrote down, and we're going to try to pull that all back out of you today. But one of the things I want to start off with is you refer to this as a toolkit. Mm-hmm. And before, during, after, all that thing. So like for everybody that's listening today, I want you to be prepared to make some notes and to really pay attention because we have all heard from the platform for years and years and years these things that, you have to do this, you have to have your pricing, you have to have your marketing, all this stuff, but you're breaking it down. Mm-hmm. And you're giving like real life scenarios. This is what you need to do to create those details. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, let's talk about like the baseline of like why people buy and the psychology of it. Before we get into the toolkit, let's talk about that. Like from your perspective, Sarah, why do people make purchases? Why do they make those buying decisions?
Right, because it's really important to understand why people buy in order to understand how to implement these things and how to nudge people towards the direction that's going to help them with their wallet or their album, but then also going to help us as a business owner, right? So people buy for kind of two main reasons. One, necessity, yes, for groceries and things like that, but then mostly it's emotions, right? It's how does that purchase make them feel, right? Like they can buy a purse from Walmart or they can buy a Louis Vuitton handbag, and one of them is going to make them feel like they have status. It's going to make them feel amazing, right? And so if we can harness the power of those emotions, but then there's one other step to that, and that's making them trust you. Because if you can get those emotions and you can make them trust you, then like your sales are going to be unstoppable. Right. And in my opinion, you hear the term IPS or in-person sales all the time. In my opinion, it's in-person service, right? We are we are serving those clients. And if you come from that point of view, then your client's going to be happy and you're going to be happy. So just that line right there was worth you hanging out with us for the next hour here. So that's fantastic. And I want to point out too, like I always refer to myself as like a textbook consumer. If I like somebody and I like the product and I feel like it's something I need to have, the cost to me kind of goes out the window to a certain extent, And when you're looking at these emotional purchases and how it makes you feel, there's some things that make you feel really good short term, there's some that make you feel good long term. Yep. And especially with what you're doing and the album we're going to show here in a little bit and your wall grouping that we're going to demo this afternoon, like those are long term things that people are going to enjoy. And that's really as a market and a profession, that's what photographers do. Mm-hmm. It's awesome when you get it, but it's even better,
years down the line. So, okay, I'm not going to keep talking here because you're not here to listen to me. Okay, so why do you use the term experience all over your website? Explain that to us.
Yep. So there's a good reason, and it's rooted in behavioral psychology, actually. So it's something called framing. And framing is when the way that you talk about something or the way that something is presented changes the way that you kind of think about it and perceive it, right? So there's a really fun study that I love, and a group of researchers took a group of people, and they said, okay, is it okay to smoke while you pray? And 94% of people said no, it's not okay to smoke while you pray. They got another group of people and they said, is it okay to pray while you smoke? And 93% of people said yes. So the same two things happening simultaneously and just flipping them like really changed the way that people thought about it and the way that people reacted to it, right? So there's another study that was done that found that framing things in terms of time and experience is much more powerful than framing things in terms of money and money spent, right? So if we can frame things in an experience and if we can give our clients an experience, then that's going to be so much more powerful and outweigh any kind of money that they're going to spend with us.
That's awesome. So when we were talking about the content today, one example you gave was your phone consultation. And this is, just to make sure that we are framing this correctly for you, this is all before booking. So what we're going to discuss now is like when somebody reaches out and has interest in a session, you do a phone consultation. And you were nice enough to send us a PDF of your phone roadmap, which we're going to share here up on the screen so people can see that. But talk a little bit about how you utilize this to start to frame the experience with Sarah Lindsay Photography.
Yep. Well, I mean, overall, like just getting on the phone with a client is going to set you apart from any other photographer, right? Because most photographers are afraid of getting on the phone and they want everything to be automated, and everything right now is all about AI. And so I feel like at least my clients are really craving that like genuine human interaction, right? So if we can get on the phone with them and we can start, one, asking them questions, right? So like part of the roadmap that you'll see is that oftentimes when we get on the phone with a client, they'll immediately be like, how much is it? Like, what does it cost? How expensive is it? And it's because in my mind, like that's really the only question that they know to ask, right? And so if we can redirect them just a little bit, yes, we're gonna answer your question, absolutely. We're gonna get to all of that because I don't hide anything. But like, let's redirect it. I wanna get to know you as a client. I wanna get to know your son or daughter as a senior. So if we can do that, it kind of like chips away that ice that they have, and it starts building that trust, right? Because again, in-person servicing, it's really important to build that trust. And so one of the ways that we can do that even faster is by using everybody's favorite word. Now, I know I've asked you this before.
You have, yep.
Your favorite word is?
My name.
Okay, great. I thought you were going to say wine, but that works too.
I think I said that the first time you asked me.
You did say that the first time, yes. So,
see, just a little secret there. I knew the answer to that.
You did. You cheated.
But I do like wine.
Well, that's good. Okay, so everybody's favorite, just universally, everybody's favorite word is their name or wine. That's fine too. That works too.
Red wine.
Red wine.
Yes.
So if you can use their name often, it builds that trust. Now, admittedly, I am very bad at remembering to say people's names, even though I know how powerful it can be. And so there's a hack that I use to kind of get around that. And for me, I request that both the parent and the senior be on the phone call with me. And when I ask all of these questions, they don't know who I'm directing the question at, right? So by saying, okay, Mary, tell me about your daughter, or Charlotte, tell me about how you want to look in your senior pictures, it forces me to use their name super often, and so that's already building that know, like, trust factor, and they'll be more likely to book me over another photographer just from having a phone call.
Right. So that simple interaction has that much power.
Huge amount of power.
So in this day and age, I mean, we're all inundated with just content and information, but when it really boils down to it, like, we have just basic human needs, and it feels good to have somebody say your name.
It does.
And know who you are and care enough to spend a half hour on the phone to learn about you.
Yep.
Because that just doesn't happen anymore. So for everybody listening, it doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel.
No.
It can be as simple as, I'm going to start doing phone calls. I'm going to create a roadmap, and I'm going to start calling people by their name. Yeah.
Yep, simple as that.
Yeah.
Honestly, just getting to know that potential client can take you so far.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned when we were talking, somebody might not book you immediately, but then they go and they have a bunch of other experiences that don't level up to that, and then they come back.
They do.
Because of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good tool that you can use too, speaking of. So I've had this happen before, actually, as a real world example. I've had, a lot of times clients will be like, okay, well, we're gonna we're gonna just see who's out there, we're gonna call around. I'm like, okay, great. If you do, here's what you should ask that photographer, right? Like, do they have the proper insurance? Do they have the proper permits? Because in Colorado, they require permits at almost every location we shoot at. Asking these simple questions is to make sure that they're covered and you're covered. And like, I want you to talk to other photographers. If they're a better fit, go for it. Book them, don't book me. But if I happen to be a better fit, then great. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you're retaining your, I don't know if power is the right word, but kind of in a way, because you're also saying this is a partnership here.
Yeah.
Like, I as you want to enjoy working, with you as a subject, and we can create really cool things together. But if I'm not the right fit, that's okay.
Yeah.
Let them go.
Absolutely, because you're establishing that you're confident in yourself, but also you're establishing kind of your authority, right? Like, I know I need insurance. I know I need a permit.
Yep.
That's also another behavioral psychology thing, is the authority bias.
Yep.
So if you can, put that in their mind that you are the authority figure in this industry, they'll be more likely to come back and book you.
Right. That's great. That's an awesome tip. Okay, so that was before booking. And then that person books with you. You have the fantastic session. So now let's talk about before the sales session. Okay.
Yep.
So another thing that I thought was amazing to share with everybody today is how you're using reciprocity in your business. So can you explain that to us just a little bit, Sarah?
Yep. So the reciprocity bias happens when, say, you give me a gift, or say, like, you buy me dinner or something like that, and then I feel the need to reciprocate, right? Because in our brain, something funny happens. It almost makes the scoreboard like 1-0, and we want to make it 1-1, right? Just subconsciously on that level.
Yep.
Yes, we want to, reciprocate and do something nice for you in return, but in our brains, we really want it to be 1-1, right? And so before the sales session, I will give my client a gift. Now, it can be general, or it can be thoughtful, right? You've already gotten to know that client a bunch, so you kind of know what they like, what they dislike, if they're, the senior's going off to college, what they're maybe gonna major in, so you can go based off that.
Yep. So you're making really good notes during your call. Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
You're
you
ready.
should see my notebook. I
Yeah.
have like 15 different notebooks, yeah. Yep, so I take notes on all my clients. I make sure I just write down what they like and dislike, all that kind of good stuff. And then I will buy them a gift, and I will give it to them before their sales session. Now, I do this specifically right before the sales session, because if I give you a gift, you immediately want to reciprocate. And as a client, right before the sales session, what's the easiest, quickest way to reciprocate? Right? By spending more money with us.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just the easiest way for them to reciprocate immediately.
Yeah. And again, just making this conversation all about me.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
I am a gift giver, and I don't like to feel like I have not given a gift that is equal to or greater than, and it almost makes me feel uncomfortable when I don't feel like I've done a little bit more. So that's great, and I think that's fantastic that you're sharing that, because again, that's a very simple thing to do. Just make a few notes. It doesn't have to be something that is $300. It can be $10 or $15 or whatever. It's just a special thank you, and that's again a touch point, a very personal touch point. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
awesome. Okay, so during the sales session, let's bump ahead to that. Can you define mirroring for us? For those of you, the people that are listening don't understand that. What is mirroring?
Yep. So mirroring is when you subtly mimic the persons that you're sitting across from, their gestures, their tone of voice, their posture, and you'll actually see this a lot of times. Like if you go and sit at a bar and you watch everybody that's there, typically people will be mirroring each other either in a group or if they're sitting just side by side as a couple. It's very interesting to watch. And basically what this does is it signals to our brain that we're similar, right? You and I are alike. And if we think that we're similar to somebody, we like them more and we trust them more. And again, going back to the beginning, people buy with emotions and trust. And so we're constantly trying to build that trust, right? And so the way that our viewers can use this in the sales room is that, like, say you're sitting like this, I would sit like this. If you sit back in your chair, I would sit back in my chair. If you're talking loud and fast and excited, I would do the same. If
I do jumping jacks, will you?
I would do that with you. Yeah.
That would be a first for a live.
We should do that.
Yeah. I don't know if the microphones would like that very well. So when you were talking about mirroring, and that's really a psychological thing. So during that process, you mentioned kind of gentle nudges of nudging your client towards not what you just think they should have, but what they truly need to purchase from that session to make it a great experience. So can you give us some examples of maybe some of those little nudges that you might help them with during the sales session?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, for me, and I think we were going to get to this later, sorry if I'm jumping ahead,
That's
but
fine.
I have all of my sales sessions in my clients' homes, right? And there's a number of reasons, we can get to that later, but it allows me to see their decor, right? And so I can then help them, and one of the questions I ask on the phone call roadmap is, are you an album person or someone who hangs things on the walls, right? So that's kind of the first step. Because yes, I do want them to buy something, but it needs to be something that they are going to love. And so then, by going into their home for their sales session, I can see, okay, like their walls are beige, so maybe they like the warmer tones, or maybe they're kind of like a beachy decor, or maybe it's kind of more like a country decor, so like if they're going to buy something framed, we can go based off that, and I can offer suggestions, and this makes them feel like I'm on their side, which I am, absolutely, but then I'm offering suggestions that's like not totally out of left field. Like somebody who has like soft beige tones in a country decor is not going to want a metal print.
Yep, something very modern.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, again, for everybody that's listening, and I hope that you really are hearing what Sarah is saying. These things that you're creating during this experience are not earth-shattering. It's just being aware and being suggestive, you know, and walking into somebody's space. Oh, okay, I see that you have a modern farmhouse style home. Okay, well that lends itself towards this style. This is what I would suggest for you. Again, keeping that power or that place of authority, I think was the word that you used. That's okay. It's okay to not force, but to suggest. You are the subject matter expert. You are, you know, and clients come to you for that suggestion, for your service, for your skill, obviously, you know, and that's what they want. And if you're not following that all the way through the sales cycle, you're missing out on revenue, on the experience side of it, on the chances of that client coming back, on making yourself feel fulfilled. So it's okay to have authority and to have some power and to sit up straight and to say, this is what I feel you should do.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you agree?
I totally agree.
Awesome. That was my little dissertation there.
I know, I love it. But I want to add on to that, right? Like, so when I go into a sales session, I never expect my client to buy anything, right? I'm always happy if they do. I will suggest things from an authoritative, point of view. But if they choose to go in a completely different direction, I'm not going to be mad at it, like I'm not going to let my emotions on that direct the sales session.
You're not going to lock the door and keep them
yeah, I'm going to lock the door and okay, you're going to buy this wall art, okay?
Sit back down.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so another phrase that I thought was brilliant. How do you utilize the question, how open are you about like ... fill in the blank? How do you use that and how does that affect people psychologically from that process?
Yep, and this is actually a good segue because this is something I use when suggesting something, right? So if you can use the phrase, how open are you about wall art? How open are you about turning this into an album? It increases the likelihood of them agreeing with you from 50-50 to 90-10, meaning like it will give you a 90% chance that they're going to agree with you, or at the very least entertain the idea long enough to make an educated decision on this, right?
Yep.
And actually, my husband and I joke about it all the time.
You mean this guy over here?
This one, yeah. I use the phrase so often that like it just slips out, but he knows it. And so I'll be like, how open are you to doing the dishes while I sit on the couch and scroll Instagram?
I put that down here. How open are you to doing the dishes while I drink wine and scroll Instagram on the couch?
I love that. And you said LOL.
I did. I added that.
Yeah.
I actually tried that with Kelly. It didn't work.
Oh, did
no.
Dang it.
But I tried.
Well, women are smart. So.
Yeah, and she is smart.
Yeah. So next time you're in a sales session and say like maybe you want to suggest an expensive wall display, right? You could be like, how open are you to printing this into a gallery wall, or you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And just see how the client reacts to it.
Right.
Again, no expectations to say yes, right? Like it's all about the client. We are serving, not selling.
Right.
But it's a good way to nudge them maybe into a higher sale, you know, if you think that that's going to benefit them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And not from a position of pressure.
No.
It's really serving that client and helping them design something that they truly should have and maybe don't have the tools to put it together.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't put it in here, but I did see it in your notes. You had a client specifically in reference to that in a really big sale from a gallery wall. Is that something that you can talk about a little bit about how you use that to increase that sale? Like during your, that would be fantastic.
Sure. So I had a client sale, I think it was my highest to date, it was over $16,000. It was a wall gallery. And it's funny because, so when I go to a client's home for their sales session, it also allows me to see their walls. So if they're interested in printing something and hanging something, I can see the space that they're thinking about doing that in. I have a little app on my iPad, take a picture, do a little mock-up, right?
Yep.
And that's extremely helpful because the client often doesn't know what a 16 by 24 looks like.
Right.
They have no concept
They think
of that
this
size.
is an 8 by 10.
Yes, they do, right?
They do.
So what I do is actually I take an 8 by 10 as reference for size, stick it up there with tape. They see how tiny it looks, right?
Yep.
Take a picture of that, and then I can do my mock-ups from there. And so with this client, she had pointed out a few different walls. There was one wall in the basement. It was like this beautiful wood, like distressed wood background. And she was like, well, I thought about displaying something here. So I made mock-ups, as I do, before I left for my sales session. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make like a shoot the moon mock-up is what I call it. And this is a mock-up where it has so many canvases that I don't think that they're going to go for it. Like, it's a lot of canvases. I think this one had like 13 canvases or something like that. Anyway, showed her all of the other mock-ups, showed her the shoot the moon mock-up, and she loved the shoot the moon mock-up. And so I was like, okay. Like, so it just goes to show you that you don't know what your client is going to like, and they don't know what they're going to like until they see it.
Right.
And it's really important.
And you're not selling to yourself.
No.
You know, you thought that was a stretch, but to her, that was really what she wanted, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody that listens to these knows that I'm a car guy. You know, like when you walk into a high-end car dealership, they don't put the scaled down model on the floor. They put the Mercedes AMG with the fancy wheels and seats, and they make you fall in love with that first, and then they're like, oh, do you actually want tires with that?
Yeah.
You know, like, so you really have to think about it from a merchandising perspective. Now, one thing that you did not say that I want to make sure that you do before we move on from this, when you go from 50-50 to 90-10, there's something that happens in your head, and you haven't said the words on that yet. And I won't put you on the spot, but you said to me, people don't want to be not open to things.
Oh, that's right.
So can you just briefly touch on that before we move on, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. So people like to think of themselves as open-minded, especially when the alternative is to be not open or closed-minded, right?
Yep.
And so when we do preface a question with how open are you, it shifts that, and they're like, oh yeah, you know what, I am open-minded, so let me think about that, you know?
Yeah.
So it kind of gives them pause.
Right.
To do that.
And again, for everybody that's listening, that little nugget right there is a really good thing to keep in mind, you know, when you're you're in your sales session, and sometimes it's hard. You get nervous, and it's your art, and it's somebody that you have worked with, and you're presenting these. To be able to just say that, how open are you to that? And let them process. It's not necessarily a yes or no question. It's something that requires a response of sorts. So that's a good one. So make sure everybody keeps track of that one. Okay, so let's talk about your fave. Okay, let's talk about perceived value.
Yes.
Okay, because I love this. We're going to talk about the album that you just saw being made out in the lab a little bit. But tell us, like, your theory on perceived value.
Yep. Yeah. So just to kind of go over what perceived value is it's basically how someone perceives an object or a service. But it's based on things like, how does it look? How does it feel? How heavy is it? It can be based on pricing, right? And so we can use perceived value in our products, right? We can say, so like, let's go back for a second. Matt, if I were to tell you that this mug was $6.99, you would perceive it to be
average. Or less than average.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I were to tell you that this mug is $350, you would perceive it to be?
Definitely a very, very nice thing, and it better be wine in there.
Yes.
Yeah. Or taste like wine.
It tastes like wine, right? Exactly, right? So we can use that to our advantage, right, when pricing our products, because the funny thing is that price alone can tell somebody a lot about a product, right? Yep. And so, like for me, I priced my signature or my heirloom albums, my highest album, at $2,500. So that signals to my client that this is a good product, this is a quality product, this is handmade, and I want this. Because another funny thing is that, and I fall into this all the time, even though I know that it's a thing, is that I want the thing that's high priced just because it's expensive. Like it's expensive and therefore I want it, right? Yes. And I fall into that all the time. And so, again, we can use that with our albums.
Right.
For me, I have a smaller size that's 1900. I have a bigger size that's 2500. And oftentimes people go for the bigger album because it's expensive and they perceive it to be better.
Right. And I will say again, to make this all about me, like if I'm looking for something online specifically, I will skip over the really inexpensive ones because my brain automatically tells me that's not something that's quality. Or if I'm looking on eBay, I automatically set the sort to most expensive first. And it's like, okay, well, this is the stuff everybody wants, and I want to start there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like I said, textbook consumer. Okay, so in the world of perceived value, so you just saw this album being made, so now you have a completely different appreciation for this process. But when you're talking about, handing this to somebody, the weight, the feel, the price tag. So let's just kind of flip through this here quick. So just your perspective now that you've seen this being made, Sarah, like what would you use back in your sales sessions with your clients if you were going to explain the process?
Absolutely. I think for me, I would stress more so that it's handmade than anything. Like I knew that before, but seeing it made by hand, meeting the people who are doing it, like it's incredible to see like the craftsmanship that goes into it and the quality and like the knowledge that goes into, all of the things that they do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before I was here full time, I had the studio, I've been using the products forever. I didn't imagine that there was a magic button that they just pushed and the thing came out the other end, but I had no idea of the number of hands that actually touches this and the handcraft. Like there's probably no less than 10 people that worked on this product, and it's getting in and out of here in 48 hours.
Yeah, which is incredible.
It is incredible, right? Yeah. And this has the white premium leather, which is awesome, and those covers are all hand done. We added your dye to the back here, or the debossing to the back, and the white on white. So, but when you think about weight and perception of value,
and that's something that people can use in the sales room. This is legit something that I do. When I am presenting my products to my clients for something, for them to mull over and to think about, I will hand them the album and I will hand it to them higher because, go ahead and take it from me. Okay. When you do, it's like the gravity of it makes it a little heavier, just a little bit, right? And I can't tell you how many times my clients will be like, oh, oh my, this is heavy.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
I like that. I just learned something. That's fantastic.
Another pricing tip before we move on, because I'm getting excited now.
Yes,
okay.
me too.
So going off of perceived value in pricing, a lot of photographers think that they need to take the cost of the product and then add all these formulas onto it and blah, blah, blah. And then they come out to a price that's like $149.89, right? But if you think about it, most of the products that we buy from Target, Walmart, the cheaper options end in 99 cents or 95 cents, right? And so subconsciously it signals to our brain that that's cheaper, they're trying to nickel and dime me, you know, that kind of thing. Whereas if you price your product in whole round numbers, $350, $2,500, it signals luxury. If you go on any luxury website right now, Louis Vuitton shoes, Ferrari, whatever, you'll see their whole round numbers, and that's for a purpose.
That's or starting at.
Yes, starting at's a great one.
Yeah, that's another good one. Awesome. Okay, so if we're taking that value, that perceived value, and keeping that going to after the sales session, and for everybody in the back, pay attention to this, because just because you can get it very quick, fill in the blank, Sarah. Can you describe the labor illusion for us?
Yep. So the labor illusion, I think, is fascinating. Because let's think about it this way. Let's start with an example, right?
Okay.
If you were to buy IKEA furniture, you can get it immediately, same day, delivered to your doorstep, or you can go pick it up.
You can be one of those people that tries to load 3 couches into an SUV.
Have you seen that?
Oh my gosh, it's incredible to watch people do that.
Yes. Right, so like you can get it same day, right? IKEA is like fairly affordable, blah, blah, blah. So if you were to think about custom furniture, which is expensive, how long does it take to make custom furniture?
Now it takes a long time.
Right, it takes months.
Yes.
Right, because they have to hand tool the wood, they have to hand upholster everything, they have to source everything, right?
Yep.
And so when something takes longer, we perceive it to be better quality and better value.
Yep.
And so for me, I tell my clients that our turnaround time is 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes even 6 to 8 weeks, right? Now, part of that is the labor illusion, right? And you can use this in a few ways, because the longer, sort of, to a certain extent, right? Because the longer it takes, the more time and the more quality they perceive an item to be, to a certain extent, right?
Yep.
So we can use it that way. You can also use labor illusion in showing behind the scenes of everything, showing the actual work that went into something. There's actually an example where I paid $125 for a handmade mug because I followed him on Instagram, and he showed me all of the steps from start to finish, and I was like, wow, like that is a quality mug. I want to buy that, you know? Right. And so for me with my turnaround times, I tell clients 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 6 to 8 weeks. But then it allows me to under-promise and over-deliver, right? Yeah. And so with like White House Custom Color, I can get it in a couple days, you know, a few days, 3, 4, 5 days. And so I will have it. It gives me time to look it over, make sure everything's perfect, which it always is. And then I can email my client in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and be like, hey, great news, your album came in early. Like, I would love to hand deliver that to you.
Right.
And then I go back to their home, and it's another touch point for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's no stress with that.
And there's no stress, because if something is wrong, then we can get it reordered, no problem. Right. You know, and I've had that happen with other labs, and that's totally fine. Mistakes happen, but it does. It gives me that buffer, so that way, you know, if something happens, we can redo it, no stress. Right,
right. So somebody who's listening along that really is coming along with our conversation, and they're getting the perceived value, they're understanding the value of showing the products, but they're still having that hard time with the high price tag. What advice or what would you recommend doing to get your head in the right spot where you're okay with saying, this particular album, what I loved how you did that, is $2,500. It features, you know, X number of images, some spreads, whatever the description is. How do you get to that point, Sarah? How do you confidently say these start at $2,500?
Well, something that I learned really early on, Matt, is that it's not my job to tell somebody else how to spend their own
Ooh,
money.
I like that.
Right?
That's a good quote.
It's not my job.
It's not
They're
your
an
job.
adult. They have a credit card. You know, they
They
can spend
do.
money however they want. I'm not going to let my own money story and my own mindset around money get in the way of that, right? So I want to price myself to where it's worth my time, but it's also like, as a luxury business, it's worth that price tag. So I've also kind of been a jump and the net will appear type person, so I tend to just kind of go into it, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, I'll pivot.
Right.
But again, it's not my job to tell them how to spend their money. If they want to spend $16,000 on a wall display, I would love to print that for you.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Yeah, and I love that you are that person. Jump in the net will appear. Like, sometimes we need a little pressure, you know, and a little change up in our lives to really get us focused. And I really like also how you said, if it doesn't work, you can always pivot. Like, we're not chiseling this stuff into, you know, a piece of stone and it has to stay that way forever.
Right.
You go down a path and it doesn't work for your heart, your mind, your clients, let's change. You know, it's like posing a high school senior. Get them into a pose, you're like, yeah, I don't really like that. Let's do something different. That's a confident thing to be able to say, nah, that stunk. Let's move on, you know. And the client will appreciate that. And I like how you're not telling them how to spend their money.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, so let's circle back. You had kind of touched on this a little bit before with the home consultations. So within the industry, you know, you have people who have brick and mortar studios, which you're working on at your home right now. You have people who are 100% on location, meeting people, that kind of stuff. In the conversations that I've had countless times, sometimes people use that as a crutch of like, well, I don't have a location, so I can't sell wall art. I can't sell albums. What would you say would be the path for somebody to begin on that, like with your home consultations and their home sales appointments? Like, how do you get around that roadblock and put in your head like you were doing this person a service by going to their home? And what are the benefits of that?
I would say, honestly, tough love, like, get out of your own way, to be honest. You
Darn
know?
right.
Get out of your own way. And I say that from experience, right? So I had a situation when I first started doing IPS, in-person serving, not in-person selling, where I was excited about it. It was my first go with the IPS. I rented a studio. I switched over my sales tax license, business license to this location, and then they ended up selling it right before busy season, for senior photos, which was a blessing in disguise after all was said and done, because it forced me to pivot super fast, and I was like, what the heck am I gonna do? So I started going to my clients' homes, and it turned out to be amazing because, like, you're not just gonna let anybody into your home, right? It's gonna be someone you trust, and you're ultimately going to kind of cross over into that friend, like, business professional relationship, right? And so for me, I have one of those hard shell Pelican suitcases. I have all of my samples in there, and then I have like a little bag with like small wall art samples for frames and things like that. I walk up all like laden down with my heavy stuff and ring the doorbell, and then we set up in like their dining room or their kitchen, wherever's comfortable for them, because like the home is comfortable for them. And ultimately, like, again, with the trust and the comfort and the emotions, like, you're gonna have, in my opinion, really good sales out of a client's home.
And I love that way of thinking. You're not thinking of not having the brick and mortar as a detriment. You're thinking going into the home is more powerful because it's very, very true. Like, you don't just let anybody into your house. You invite your family, you invite your close friends, you entertain. That's your space. That's where your children are, your pets, all the things. So that really is a powerful statement. You said, like, you're in the friend zone. You know, you're making it easier on them. They don't have to travel. They, you know, if they have children, they don't have to worry about childcare, you know, things like that. You're working around busy schedules and helping them out. So that really is a stacked win-win-win-win for the client.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the way that you're bringing stuff with you, like, you don't have to take 40, 60s into somebody's house to be able to help them understand, especially using the app. Take a picture of the wall, calibrate it, throw the images up there, and you can do it real time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's brilliant. Yes, that's why you're here today. Yeah.
I don't know about that. I try.
So just some closing thoughts that I put together, after our discussion, and I really want to make sure everybody is clearly paying attention today, because the stuff that Sarah's mentioned, you can really build a lot of success out of that. And I've been one who has said for many years that you cannot skip over that last 3 to 5% of the details in your business. That's really what separates. You brought up the example of buying a purse at Walmart versus a purse at Louis Vuitton. A purse at Walmart is $20, and if you're going to go to Louis, $5,000,
right?
6,000. They do the same thing.
They have same function.
You can put the stuff right in it, and they will go with you. But to have the detail, to have the demand, to have the status, that's the detail. That's what people miss out on. Like, if you were going to recommend something that somebody could put into practice from a detail perspective, maybe other than what we talked about, is there anything that's front of mind to you that you could be like, do this one little tidbit? Anything that I could put you on the spot on?
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Because I love doing that.
Thanks, Matt. I love being put on the spot. Honestly, for me, mindset work has done a lot. Again, getting out of your own way. It's not my job to tell other people how to spend their own money. Like, those little things, like, really can take you from 90% to 100% in your business. So, do the work. Some people think mindset work is a little woo-woo. I have found it's really, really helpful, and there's science that backs it.
Very much so. Yeah, and I love that you're saying that, because having a confident mindset and being authority of what you do is very important, and to not be apologetic in your words and your tone and your posture. All of those things make a difference from the first time you're on the phone until the very end. When I have an important phone call, I don't sit down and take it. I stand up. And
I like that tip.
Because it just makes you feel bigger. It makes you feel more powerful and more sturdy, to be standing instead of slouching in the chair. One more thing that I did steal from your slide deck from when you were speaking at Sync earlier this year, about the way that you allow people to ask questions of you. Can you talk about that a little bit before we close up here?
I love this one. So typically, if we're in like a sales session, or even say we just got off or we're about to get off the phone, we've had our phone call, a lot of times the natural thing for us to ask is, do you have any questions for me? And which is fine, but subconsciously, it almost sounds like a burden for them to have questions, and nobody wants to be a burden. Nobody wants to be the person who didn't understand something, or has to be like, maybe I didn't hear that. I want to clarify, but I'm a little uncomfortable about it, right? So, but if we change it just slightly and we say, what questions do you have for me? Right. You're assuming that they have questions, and so then the easiest response is for them to ask a question. And so, that way they can get the clarification they need to purchase an album or wall art, or even to book with you, right? Right. And we want that, again, building trust, emotions, leaving it open. What questions do you have for me? Yeah. And really allowing them to do that without feeling like they're burdening you. Exactly, right? Because I'm the kind of person, you'll tell me something and I'll forget about it. And so I ask a lot of questions, and I do feel guilty about it sometimes, but I have noticed that, say I'm at a doctor's office and they say, what questions do you have for me? I'm like, oh, well, let me bring out my list. I've got questions for you. I've been taking detailed notes. Right, exactly. Yes, for sure. Well, this has been fantastic, Sarah. And we really appreciate you and the dude in the back of the room. That one. Spending your time and flying up here to hang out with us today. So for people that would like to follow along with you for your YouTube channel, for the education that you're going to be doing, where do they find you? Where's the best spot to find Sarah Lindsay? Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on YouTube at the Sarah Lindsay. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah Lindsay Photographer, because Sarah Lindsay Photography was taken. Okay. Dang it. Let's see. TikTok is Sarah_Photog, because I'm cool like that. Okay. And I think that's about it. Okay.
Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a reminder to everybody following along too, if you're watching the recording on this and if you have any questions for Sarah, just put them in the comments and we'll be able to reach out to you and get answers on those. Follow along on the WHCC YouTube so you can get access to cool conversations like we just had today. Follow us on Instagram at WHCC Pro, and for all of your questions about products and options, hit up WHCC.com. I'm Matt, this is Sarah. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.